Hello and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live. My name's Simone Clarke and I'm the Chief Executive Officer for UN Women here in Australia. And today's lunchtime session is all about International Women's Day 2024. So thanks for joining us. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the various lands on which we work today and the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people participating in this session today. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and recognise and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of New South Wales, where I'm joining you from. I'd like to start by introducing our guest panellists here with me today, which we're very excited to have with us. Joining us today, we have Emma Harvie from Achievers. We also have Lainie Cassidy from KPMG, one of our IWD at Work champions, and really has been a driving force in a lot of the work that we are trying to do in and around International Women's Day at Work. And also I'm joined by Margaret Smith, who heads up our partnerships here at UN Women Australia. So just a quick introduction for myself, and then we'll get down to the interesting parts and engaging our panellists in a Q&A. And I would ask you that if you have questions as we are working through the session today, please share them in the chat and we'll do our best to loop back to those at the end of the session. So if you have time and you have a burning question, please feel free to pop it in the chat. As I mentioned, International Women's Day is a United Nations internationally sanctioned day of observance, and it is dedicated to celebrating and also reflecting on the achievement of SDG number 5, gender equality. UN Women is the agency that's tasked, along with a range of partners, governments, corporations, individuals, and people just like you, to drive and accelerate gender equality wherever we are. We work in over 100 countries, really aimed to empower women wherever they are, to ensure that they can earn, learn, and lead and live a fulfilling life in whatever circumstances they find themselves in. As we talk about International Women's Day this year, the theme is an extension of the Commission on the Status of Women's annual priority theme, and it's focusing on financial empowerment. We know that financial empowerment is absolutely critical to achieving all of the SDGs and, in fact, achieving the priorities that we have set as a globe in achieving gender equality. So what's all the hype about for International Women's Day 2024? As you may have already heard, the theme for this year is Counter in, Invest in Women and Accelerate Progress. And as I mentioned, the theme is central to our conversation today, but also we want to call out some ways that you all might get involved at your workplace, at home, but particularly IWD at Work is really looking at how we can bring International Women's Day to life where you are all across this great country that we all live in. So I'm delighted to be joined by our panellists here today because we have some great experience and case studies that we want to share with you. Some of the successes around International Women's Day at Work, and maybe some pointers and tips and tricks for things that you might want to introduce in your workplace. It really is an opportunity for all of us to reflect on not only the challenges that we face around gender equality, but also some of the opportunities that sit in front of us and how we can all work towards achieving a more equitable and fair workplace and Australia. And that's not just limited to the women. So the men who have joined us today, welcome as well. We all have a role to play, and equality benefits all of us, as we know. And there's a range of statistics to talk about. But anyway, enough about me. What I'd like to do now is to hand over to Margaret Smith, who's going to give us an introduction into what IWD at Work is and share some information about how you might want to get involved this year with UN Women's International Women's Day. Margaret.
Great. Thanks, Simone. Hi, everybody. Lovely to have you here today. As Simone mentioned, International Women's Day is one of our flagship campaigns each year. But we had a problem, which was actually a good problem to have. Our events were nearing capacity. So we thought about how we could take the important messages of gender equality to a broader audience and get workplaces involved in engaging their staff. So in doing that, we talked to leading employers and they told us that they really wanted to support UN Women's work to empower women. They wanted to celebrate International Women's Day in a way that was meaningful for them. They wanted to learn from experts in their field and explore solutions. And they also wanted to use IWD as a moment to spotlight gender equality initiatives and plans that they had in place for the year, and to really create that sense of connection through to their gender equality initiatives throughout the whole year, not just centred around one day in March. So we developed IWD at Work, and that includes company-wide virtual access to our IWD 2024 our national event speakers and our content with live and on-demand streaming from the 8th of March through to the 5th of April. We have exclusive content for workplaces, including speaker interviews, vox pops, infographics, insights, and other resources that businesses can tap into to share their International Women's Day plans and also their broader gender equality initiatives. And a resource kit that actually helps businesses run those campaigns and helps leaders have more informed conversations about and amplify their gender equality plans and initiatives. So IWD at Work, we have put that together as a product, and that's priced at $7,500. And as a non-profit organisation, we use these contributions to support our work globally on women's empowerment programs. And we're really delighted that today that Emma from Achievers and Lainie from KPMG have joined us to be able to share how they've utilised IWD at Work and how it can actually help you drive your inclusion, equality and belonging in the workplace as well. So I'll hand back to you, Simone, and we'll hear a bit more from Emma and Lainie about how they implemented IWD from a practical perspective. Thanks.
The old "you're on mute." That's a great introduction, Margaret, to our guest panelist today, Emma Harvie from Achievers. Emma, thanks so much for joining us, and also Lainie Cassidy from KPMG. I'm wondering, just as an opener for those who don't know you on the call, if you could just give us a short introduction about your role and background, and then we'll get into some of the questions around IWD at Work. So, Emma, firstly from you, you and your role at Achievers, I know that we've had a long association. You've been incredibly supportive of the work that we do. So just maybe to hear a bit more about yourself, and then we'll launch into some questions after we introduce Lainie as well.
Thanks, Simone. Achievers is an employee experience platform that engages employees. It empowers leaders through frequent recognition, reward, connection, community, and inclusion. And in addition to leading the customer success team here in Achievers in APAC, I'm also part of the Achievers Women's Network and the Achievers DEI committee. So I'm lucky in that I get to combine my passion for gender equity with my day job.
Fantastic. And you certainly do, Emma, and then some, I think, not just in your day job, but I think, you know, how you live and how you walk the talk every day. And speaking of walking the talk, Lainie, it's great to have you with us. You have been a champion from the get-go of IWD and IWD at Work, and I think the work that you've done at KPMG is phenomenal. I'm looking forward to hearing much more and sharing that with the audience today. Just a few words of introduction, Lainie, from you and your journey to how you ended up here with us today on this LinkedIn Live session.
Absolutely, Simone, and thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation today. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a woman sitting at a table wearing a black and white t-shirt. I've been with KPMG for 10 years, and I am a director head up the inclusion, diversity, equity, and mental health, wellbeing, and health and safety portfolio. So part of that is similar to Emma. I get to combine my infectious passion, I'm told, with what I get to do every day. But I think the most important thing is I am blessed to work in a truly inclusive firm with brilliant senior leaders that enable me to truly make a difference. And I've got an exceptional team that enables the strategy. So very, very lucky and keen to share a little bit more around how we bring that to life with IWD at Work.
Great, thanks, Lainie. I think you touched on that critical importance of leaders at all rungs of the organisation and across the organisation. So we might touch on that a little bit later. But first, let's get into exploring a little bit more about the work that you've been doing with KPMG. I know that you've started out as a corporate buying tables at our events, and then realised that, you know, there were some other ways and extensions and activations that you could bring to life for your people, and that was largely through your champion and architecture of that. I know that in 2023, over 2,100 KPMG team members celebrated International Women's Day using IWD at Work. Can you share how you did this and some of the insights and learnings from that experience with others here today on the call?
Absolutely. And I have to say, we didn't think we would get that attendance. So, you know, it was a really great outcome. I'll start by sharing, you know, at KPMG, we genuinely try to have the conversation around gender equality and gender equity every day, not just on really important days like International Women's Day. And I think that our people genuinely feel that we care and we are talking about and acting on this, not just because it's a day that every other corporate does it. And that I believe has attracted a lot of people to come to a number of our events, including International Women's Day, because of the authenticity that we share. And our CEO and our chairperson and our executive sponsor, Dorothy Hisgrove, speaks out on that quite clearly. So I think we talk about it quite constant and consistently, and so then it just gives an anchor to knowing that we truly mean what we say when they do come to events like International Women's Day. But having an appointed executive sponsor that sits on our exec, so our National Executive Committee, has been great. So Dorothy Hisgrove, who's my leader, our National Managing Partner of People and Inclusion, has been able to ensure that we've got that real solid tone from the top. And Andrew Yates, our CEO, is also part of Champions of Change Coalition. So I think having leadership voice to share not only that they will be attending your corporate tables, but also encouraging their teams along. And when their teams do get along to our events that we partner with UN Women on, they're there and they see their leaders in the room. So that's been really effective in terms of tone from the top. I think as well, the feedback that we had from our people, particularly last year, so the 2023, was the impact that people felt or learned from some of the brilliant keynotes and events that were run through UN Women. So hopefully this year they got a taste of some really brilliant learning and education, and also a really strong call to action for each of those that attended, and we can top the scale and have some more people coming along.
Great, Lainie. I think that's one of the big highlights, I think, around IWD at Work is that, as Margaret spoke to, we attempted to develop something which would then extend into the community and into corporations and into workspaces so that people could have these conversations. But I think what underpins all that is this amazing amount of really rich content that we have available, as not only as part of the virtual stream, but also some of the tips and the resources that we draw on from a number of organisations, including organisations like Champions for Change, as well as others working in the space. So when we talk about IWD at Work, just to impress upon people who have joined us today and don't know much about it, there is a range of virtual resources, I think, that are really useful in engaging teams and staff, in and across companies, wherever they are. So Lainie, I'm really interested. I know that you did, again, some really interesting, you had some interesting activations this in 2023 rather. Just interested in how you use IWD at Work to really engage your employees and to really galvanise them around something that's really inherent to your DNA as at KPMG.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, shout out to Margaret, because I think we've been joined at the hip for a little while in terms of the early planning. So regular, I think we've got weekly meetings in now with our working group members. So this is the other thing that I believe is key, not that it's just sat in terms of the activation going live and successful within the inclusion, so my team, but we've been able to generate a working group. So we have various other members of our networks or employee resource groups brought in and really part of the pre-planning, and then it's just kind of spread word mouth that way. So the pre-planning has been critical. Having access to the tools and resources. I was talking to our communications team yesterday. The toolkit the IWD at Work provide in terms of messaging has been brilliant, and we've leveraged that to no end. We've also access the live stream option. So even though we did start with the corporate tables where we had our leaders go and attend, take selfies at the event, but then share what they learned and what their commitment for change is going forward, was really important. But then everybody wanted to hear what our leaders were hearing. And so with the benefit of International Women's Day or IWD at Work, UN Women allowed us to live stream that content back into our workplace. So our employees were able to come together across the nation in each of our offices, and we hosted watch parties in person. I'm not a one for cupcakes at all, particularly on anchor days, but a nice lunch to come together and share and listen to the content that our leaders were learning from, and having our state chairperson in the room to open up each of those watch parties was really, really good too.
Yeah, great. Some great tips and tools. Emma, I might just jump to you and just engage you in a bit of a conversation around why you think it's important in terms of employee engagement, in terms of business more broadly, why it's important to mark International Women's Day and what that opportunity is for you in terms of achievers and the work that you do with a range of members and businesses every day.
Yeah, the research from the Achievers Workforce Institute has confirmed that employee experience and that deep, compelling sense of belonging at work when people feel welcomed, known, included, supported, and connected. And International Women's Day is just one of the, I guess, reasons to focus on that and to bring that to life. Throughout the last 3 or 4 years, and I know we have a lot of HR specialists and DEI specialists live today, is HR in particular has spent a lot of time talking about resilience, support, mental health, wellbeing, DEIB, and there's an added responsibility on HR and leaders in particular to play a role in this for all employees. So only 26% of employees feel that they belong at work, and women actually have a lower sense of belonging than average. They're trailing men by 15%. And International Women's Day is a way of touching on all 5 of those pillars that I mentioned: welcomed, known, included, supported, and connected. It's a way to ensure that women feel part of the organisation, that they're celebrated, that they're seen, that they're part of the conversation, and are thought of in all experiences that you're creating for your employees. And because gender equity isn't just a women's issue, it's important to bring all genders into the conversation and really focus on creating that allyship across the whole organisation. It's also, I think, an opportunity to align your actions, what you're actually doing in the organisation, to your values, so actually demonstrating those values. And employees are increasingly vocal on wanting to work for organisations that actually stand behind causes and issues and make a difference in the world. They're asking more of the organisations, and if they don't get it, they'll go elsewhere to find that.
Absolutely. It's the alignment, between purpose and passion. And I think, there's certainly a lot of passion on the call today. And as you call out, how we bring that to life and engage employees and make them feel part of the community, belonging and connected is core to, being human, I think. So it really is an opportunity to do all that. I'm also interested if you've got any insights around how IWD and how celebrating IWD in whatever way, shape or form, hopefully without some cupcakes unless you're really desperate, but how IWD contributes to business outcomes. Have you seen an extension of that in terms of your experience around either employee engagement or business outcomes more broadly?
Absolutely. We know that belonging is more than just a buzzword, and we've used it several times on this live session today already. But employees with a strong sense of belonging have 6 times more engagement, 9 times more commitment, and 12 times more advocacy, which means that they're more likely to stay at the organisation and more likely to recommend your organisation as a great place to work. Research we just released today shows that 65% of employees have one foot out the door. And inflation and cost of living are having a clear impact on employees' intent to stay or intent to look elsewhere for higher compensation. We also know that there's not an endless pot of money, and that only one organisation in a particular market can pay the most. And so we need to focus on what we're terming emotional salary. So those things that you can add to an employee experience that have value to the employee, that also make a difference and can potentially outweigh a salary freeze or someone looking for higher compensation elsewhere. So they're the types of things like cultural alignment, frequent and meaningful recognition, connection, and career equity, all things that International Women's Day highlights and celebrates and creates conversation around, because that's going to reduce the risk of your top performers looking to move elsewhere. And we know that attrition has an enormous cost on any business.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think often, people don't see the connection necessarily between something like a celebration or a focus around International Women's Day, for example, and then that sort of ripple effect that it has on certainly business outcomes and also culture. Picking up on culture, Lainie, I might just go back to you, because I'm interested to see from your experience if you've seen any translation of involvement with IWD at Work and participation more broadly around things and initiatives that align passion and purpose at KPMG. So interested to hear some of that from you, if you've got any insights on your experience in that space.
Yeah, I absolutely. And I think it's important, picking up on what Emma said, that we have an ongoing listening strategy at KPMG. So it's not an annual survey that we run and then we wait until, you know, the next year to hear feedback from our people around the impact of some of the programs and initiatives that we run across the year. And in our recent Global People Survey, as it relates to inclusive culture, there was some really positive qualitative commentary around some of the work that we do, particularly as it relates to International Women's Day. So fine combing the comments around what makes KPMG a great place to work, and you know, part of their great people experience at KPMG in relation to belonging. There was quite a lot of reference in regards to International Women's Day and the work that we did, particularly focusing on some of the watch parties and the leadership advocacy that we had and the appointment of our executive or our senior executive sponsor. What we have moved towards the end of last year is the intersectionality as well, as and when we're talking about gender, which is really, really important. So when we're thinking about you know, all genders, what does that mean when we're thinking about cultural diversity? And so as part of our revised gender equity action plan, which we launched in November of 2023, we saw some strong interest and positive support around weaving intersectionality when we're talking about our efforts as it relates to gender.
Yeah, interesting. And I think intersectionality is a really important part of it, of the lens through which we look at inclusion and diversity, and how we actually bring that to life wherever we are, irrespective of the workplace, or certainly inclusive of the workplace. I'm really interested in just having a bit more of a discussion with both of you around some of the other initiatives that you've been able to draw on. I know International Women's Day is for the UN. It is a moment to really focus, as I mentioned, on SDG 5 and our gains and our progress towards it. Unfortunately, we know that in the world that we're currently living in, there are many challenges and barriers to the acceleration and indeed the achievement of those goals. Some of them are outside of our control as well. So I'd like to touch on the conversation around belonging and connection, because I think it's a really important one, particularly when you look beyond our own shores and even in our own country, and look at some of the issues that we are facing as a planet, whether it's climate change, whether it's crisis, whether it's unrest, political unrest. Just really the notion of belonging and connectedness, and anything else that you've done to be able to really foster that, either in your workplaces or perhaps, Emma, starting with you, certainly in terms of employee engagement. Be interested to hear about sort of other initiatives and things that you might present to people on the call around how to engage and really connect teams and workforces and individuals to really feel part of the mission of an organisation.
Yeah, maybe I'll start with what we've done at Achievers, and then maybe I can draw on some of the experiences from some of our customers as well. But for International Women's Day specifically, we did things like, through our recognition program, encouraging recognition either to celebrate women in the workforce, or for women and others to celebrate those who supported your career. So celebrate, recognise, thank those people who created space for you to have a conversation, who supported your development plan. Those in-between moments that actually really matter, versus just focusing on promotions and those bigger moments that are often visible as well. For International Women's Day, the last 2 years for the Melbourne in-person event, we've actually purchased a table for being there in person, and we created a nomination process internally for those employees to nominate each other to get a seat at the table, literally at the table. And that was recognition for their hard work, whether it was in the gender equity space or career development or supporting others. And it was super meaningful for those people to actually be there on the day and hear the speakers live and be able to bring that back to the team. But I think the most meaningful moment for me was reading those nominations, is actually inviting input from all of our employees. It wasn't just me as the advocate for Achievers Women's Network choosing people. It was coming from the wider team, so that it involved everybody in the conversation. What our customers are doing, again, through their recognition and reward programs, is things like celebrating stories. So being able to create a recognition moment that is a story about either something you've achieved as a woman in the workforce, and a lot of us are uncomfortable with that idea of self-promotion and calling out something that we've done great. So there's also the opportunity to call that out for others, as well as to, I saw you, this was amazing, great work. And by posting it in the recognition program, it aligns to the organization's values. So it's aligning to the behavior that you're trying to drive within an organization. And it shows everybody else what great looks like. So if we can celebrate those people, leaders in particular, who are inviting us into conversations, who are creating space for us, who are encouraging us to step up or make progress towards our development plans, then everybody else sees that that is great, and they start repeating that same behavior as well. So where we have a front row seat to some of the biggest organizations in Australia and around the world who are doing that in their recognition program as a way of acknowledging International Women's Day.
It's a great idea. I love the notion of, literally a seat at the table and pulling that through the reward and recognition program in particular, because and that recognition that you talked about, that we see you, that it's done by peers as well, and that you're being recognized for contribution. So yeah, I love that analogy. We might have to try and use that somewhere. That's really, really interesting. And I think that seat at the table and that extension from the events, in real life to the virtual as well, is a great example, Emma. So thanks for sharing that with us. Lainie, I know you've probably had some similar experiences, whether it's at IWD or with and through IWD, but keen to hear any other examples that you might like to share for those on the call now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have lots of already what Emma has shared, but I think to add to some of the great content already put forward, what's really important is accountability. And so making sure that when we're setting our gender equity targets, that we're continuing to review that. And we do have a gender equity target for women in partnership and women in leadership by 2025, and we hold ourselves to account not only internally through our internal governance structures like our board and our National Executive Committee with monthly reporting on how we're tracking our progress, but for those on the call that haven't read, we've got our KPMG impact report that we release every year, and that's really around transparency on how we're going with things as it relates to, for my space, gender equity and equality and how we're achieving on those targets. So I think the accountability piece is important, and they're linked to our leaders' KPIs, and so that's always really, really critical. Employee resource groups, if questions around belonging, we engage them very tightly and connect them into our inclusion, diversity and equity strategy and the programs in which we're doing, so much so that we co-design the strategy with all of our ERGs so that they were able to input, so that we could centre their voices truly, and it wasn't something that we just sat on a table and then rolled out. And I think that's created a real deep connection to what we're doing and particular engagement to the work that we're delivering for our people. Storytelling is one of my number one things I think that we can continue to do, and you can never do enough on as it relates to anything inclusion, diversity and wellbeing and mental health. We've got a Humans at KPMG platform. We've got brilliant women that share their story. We've got brilliant allies that share their stories. And I think just bringing to life what it means to be a human first at KPMG has really driven that connection and dropping of the mask to a certain degree for our people. Our Empower network, so our women's network, so across the nation, we've got a group of women that come together and share their experiences and kind of a safe space, so a circle in safe space. There's so much that I could share. Our leadership capability as it relates to women in leadership has been another key focus of ours in regards to how do we ensure that our high potential women are getting the equitable opportunities across their career. And so we've got some core programs, and we partner with some brilliant externals to bring them to life in a co-created way, and allyship. And by that I mean that it's not just us women sitting in the room to advocate for each other, but we've got a dedicated allyship program in which we encourage our brilliant allies to come and share the voice and share the load, and that's something that we deliver internally. Our domestic and family violence is also a program of work. There has been a core pillar of focus when we're thinking about gender-based violence, and the curriculum that we developed and delivered for our leaders not only educated on what DFE was or is, but also the nuances around that, how to have a safe conversation and a supportive conversation. And then where does all this come from? So it does touch on gender disparity, and how do you break down those stereotypes? How do you ensure that you're not victim shaming? And then a really strong call to action at the end, so that people come away walking the talk and a commitment for change. So it's just some examples. But I think our people's voices are critical, like I said earlier, and we've got our networks that we are hand in glove with in delivering on our programs, and they are champions to help us get the message out loud and proud.
Amazing. Yeah, I think there's so many extensions. And so again, to those who have joined us today, we'd love to get more people involved in IWD at Work. It is a great program. It is a great offering. And I think for the price point, it's really as much as you would like to make of it or not. So from UN Women's perspective, we're incredibly proud of the work we've been able to do to create this program for you. We do have one question that's come up, which is, would using IWD at work for a global company? In fact, it's perfect for multiple locations. I think, Lainie, you can also talk a little bit about this. But perhaps you could answer the question in terms of your experience, because it's certainly the virtual, the fact that it is virtual really opens itself up to multiple locations, different time zones. But Lainie, perhaps from your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, KPMG, whilst we are a member firm in Australia, we have member firms across the globe. And one of the things that we have been asked is to share our efforts around International Women's Day for this year, because of the great success that we had with IWD at Work in 2023 from our other member firms across the globe. I think the benefit of different time zones is brilliant. Often in Australia, we are left behind, but it's brilliant that we're able to kind of have the advantage here. So yes is my answer to that. We've been able to share the work that we've done this year, and it's definitely been asked by our friends in Europe and overseas to be able to share on what we're doing.
Absolutely. I think the virtual nature of IWD at Work is one of its many strengths. Emma, I'm not sure if you've got any thoughts on the sort of the globalness, is that even a word, of IWD at Work and the package and the offering. But Emma, I think probably the virtual and the fact that we are all working, to a large extent virtually and in offices. Have you seen any extensions of that in your clients, or the way achievers have used IWD at Work?
Absolutely. We did some work over the last couple of years in partnership with UN Women to make sure that the UN theme is what is being used across our client base. We're quite passionate about aligning with that theme. One of the things that we do for our customers is we provide a communications library. So essentially a toolkit so you can promote recognition or employee engagement related activities throughout your organisation. And International Women's Day is one of those pieces. We provide artwork, email copy, announcement copy, things like that our customers can edit, localise the language and things like that. That's a type of thing that you make global in an organisation. So you can take those resources. It doesn't matter where your employees are located. They can also acknowledge International Women's Day in their own way. There's always nuances in different markets where that small population in a North American headquartered company. So I get that we're often last, as Lainie said. It's really nice to be able to lead the way with the work that we're doing here in Australia and actually influence global organisations to do more and align to the UN theme as well.
Can I just add something as well, Simone? I think what was
Sure.
really beneficial with regards to some of the keynote and the brilliant speakers that were available through UN Women and IWD at Work, when we had the corporate part, like the tables that we had, it just opens the talent pool up on the global stage to thought leadership. And I think that's a real benefit, that we're not just limiting thinking within Australia, but you're expanding it to what does this mean globally? And there's some brilliant knowledge that can be shared.
Absolutely. Look, we are coming towards the end. Oh, we have a question that's come in just now. Details of 2024 live stream speakers available. I'm sorry, I cannot share that with you, but we are on the eve of being able to announce the headline speakers and also the state-based speakers. So bear with us. It is an incredible lineup. It is very much anchored in the theme, which is around counting her in and count her into obviously increase investment in women, investing in women, and accelerating progress. So watch this space. There's more information. We have a microsite that you please log on, iwd.net.au. We'll be releasing more information about our speakers and the lineup and all aspects of International Women's Day. And also the fact that If you are involved in IWD at Work, there is also exclusive content just to the virtual package. So, we'd love you to attend the events by all means, but obviously we know that not everyone can be in the room with us. So by extension, we actually offer exclusive content that you'll get that actually the people in the room don't even get to see as virtual participants in International Women's Day 2024. So reach out. We'd love to hear from you. If you're interested to come along to the events, we'd love you to buy a table. If you'd like to look at IWD as a package and broaden that out through your network to your employees and even third parties and vendors. We often see a lot of people who come to the event using it as an opportunity to engage others in a conversation. I think, Emma, as you alluded to, that's a really important way to engage not only your own people, but also your, some of your vendors and clients. So there's a whole lot of different ways you can engage not only your teams, clients and staff in the events, but also obviously through the IWD package. And then there's one of, now all the questions are coming in just as I'm about to wrap up, but thanks everyone, enjoying the questions. Another question, how far in advance is IWD at Work available for a certain year? In terms of the live stream, so the live stream becomes available literally on the day, and then it's available for a period of up to 2 months, depending on the speakers that we have. We have some caveats on some speakers that we can't have the recordings available permanently. If you wanted to have a conversation around that, happy to talk to you about that. We go live in January with our content, so there's always things online for people to look at, and you can actually literally log on to iwd.net.au as well. So we'd love to have you involved in International Women's Day, whether it's through a UN Women's IWD at Work offering at our events or in your own special way. It's a really important milestone for us all to take a moment to pause and to recognise women, to celebrate our diversity, ensure that we are inclusive of all women across, all the intersectional lenses that we live and operate in. And I just want to wrap up by saying a really big thank you to Emma, Harvie and Lainie Cassidy, who have been amazing champions for gender equality, gender equity more broadly, but also the work that we do here at UN Women. So a very sincere and heartfelt thanks for taking time out to share your experience with those people. And for those who've been able to join us today on this LinkedIn Live session, I hope it's been useful. If you'd like to hear more about UN Women, unwomen.org.au by any means, particularly about IWD at Work and the IWD offering, please go to iwd.net.au and let's count her in at this IWD 2024. Thank you.